Okay, now let's start off from this edit button. So once I click this edit button, the page that should go to this get student JSP, where it should display the detail of that particular student to whom I hit that edit button. So if I click the edit button for this student, then his details that has been given while registration should be displayed, the student ID, name and the campus. So if I need any modification, then I can change and update it. So that's how it should work. So to do that, first start from getting a function for that. I am first of all I am defining it as so here this time last time we get whole set of students. For that we use the array list as the return type, but this time we need only one student. Actually we need one rows value, one student rows values. So one student row, as I said, it represents a student, a row represents a student. So the return type here, it must be student, and I am naming it as get student, and in the parameter I am passing the student ID. So because student ID is the primary key, so it's a unique one in the table. So for the given student ID we can get the details of that related student. So now I am going to implement this function. So the function body, as I said, is same for this as well. And the function body structure is same, that try catch finally block, and even the CRUD functions also similar. So here the difference is earlier we retrieved all students details, select start from student, so that will return all the students in the table. This time we need only one particular student for the given student ID. So here I am specifying using the where condition, select start from student, where ID equal to, and setting the parameter here as a question mark. So in the next line we have to set the parameter here, the value for the parameter. So it's an integer first position, even though there is only one, we have to specify this position, and it is the first position, and the ID is SID. From this parameter I am getting the student ID, so I am passing it here. And the next line I am just as this earlier we did for the list students, executing this, and it will return a result set, and I am running this result set here. So here one difference is here we are going to retrieve only one student object, even though it shows a while loop, there will be only one row will be retrieved, so no need to worry about it using the while loop. While loop is just to get the access to the row that we retrieve using this next method. So thereafter here we defined created student object, and here we are setting the values for that object. So finally I am returning the student object. So I am named it as ST, so I am returning it ST. So that's how it is. Very similar to the earlier one. Only difference is here we are retrieving only one record, one row. For a given student ID we are retrieving a student's detail. So the select statement looks like select start from where, and specifying the ID because it's the primary key, and setting that parameter for this ID as the id that is passed used in the get student method parameter. Thereafter I am executing this query and running this loop to get the access to the row, and thereafter retrieve all the values column by column, and finally I am returning the value. Once I set the value for the student object, I am returning the student. So at the end of the execution of this function, we will have the student object that we need. So now it's up to how to get it onto the JSP file. Now let's create a servlet for this function to perform this CRUD function. I'm creating a servlet in the controller package and naming it as get student. Get student. Okay, now it's created. Okay, now get back to this student JSP, and this is where the edit button is. So from here onwards, once I click this edit button, the request should be forwarded to this get student servlet. So here I am giving the action get student, method is post, and now comes this value and the name. So if you look at the function we have implemented to retrieve the student detail, in the parameter it gets the student ID is passed as argument. So we need to pass that student ID to this servlet from this button. So that's why I have created this edit but this submit button inside a form. That form consists of a hidden field. So that hidden field means it still holds a value inside the form, but it does not show up on your interface, in the user interface. So here I am naming it as ID and giving the value of that student ID. So each and every time the student ID we retrieve for this row, the student ID and details, this button also will be created with the input field having a student ID inside it, but it's hidden. So here I am passing the student ID here too. Okay, now so we have passed that student ID here. So just like this, for this delete column also, this we are going to pass the ID because it should uniquely identify the student in the table and delete it. So here also I am giving the same details as it is. Name is ID and the value for that hidden field is student ID. So I will come to this action once I finished with this get student and the update function. So here we are done with this hidden fields value and name. Now go to our servlet. So here is where I am going to pass that value, that ID value, and retrieve the student from the database. So I am declaring a variable, integer variable, to hold the student ID. So request.get parameter and the name is ID, and so we have to pass it as integer, since as I said the request.get parameter function will return only the string values. integer dot pass int. Okay, next I'm going to create a object of student implementation class. Because to get the function of get student from there, so the get student will return a student object. So for that I have to create a student object here, student. So it has to import the package, so I am importing it, and now in the next line I am assigning the student I get from the get student function to the student object I have created here. So SID is the SID same as here. I am passing the SID here, the student ID. So it will the function will process and return a student object, and that will be passed to this student object. Okay, now so we have in this servlet we have now got the student object that we want, the student. So that object will consist of the details of that student. Okay, now if you look at the demonstration I have shown you in the first video, when the student when the user clicks the edit button of a particular student, so it will redirect to another page where it displays that particular student's detail. So now here in the implementation side, what we have done is we have passed this student ID detail to a servlet, get student servlet, and there we have using a function we have retrieved the student object from the database. Okay, so next what we have to do is from this servlet we have to pass the this student object to another JSP file which will show on the user side with the student's details. So to do that, so here what we want to do is to pass a value, pass this student object. So in servlet using this request object, there is a method called request.set attribute. So if you look at the parameter of it, the string value of name and object of any type. So by using this method you can pass any value from a servlet to a JSP file. So to do that you have to specify a name for the value you pass. So here I am passing student, I am naming the value I pass as. So the second argument it can be any even it can be a string or integer. So here I am going to pass the student object. So I am going to pass the student object as a value from the servlet to another JSP and naming it as student. Okay, we are done with this part. So next we have to forward this request from the servlet to another JSP. So to do that I am going to use an object called request dispatcher. So actually it's an interface, so I'm creating an object of that interface, and request.dispatcher equal get servlet context dot get request dispatcher, and inside this we have to specify the JSP that we want to pass this, we want to forward this request. So I'm giving its name slash get student. So this is the way how to specify the name of the JSP, get student dot JSP. Okay, so this is where I want to pass this request, and in the next line to do that I'm going to call a method in this method of this dispatcher called forward. This is the one that actually going to forward this request and response to that JSP. Okay, now we have set this attribute and forwarded this request of this servlet to the JSP page, get student JSP page. So now let's see how to retrieve this attribute and display the student details. So here I'm going to open a scriptlet tag here to get the attribute that has been passed from that servlet. So here first of all I'm creating the student object, because it's the student object that has been passed, so I have to assign it to this object. So student equal to, so if you look at this this servlet, to set the attribute we have used the method request.setAttribute and specified a name for it and pass that object here. So in this JSP, to retrieve it we are going to use a method of this request object called getAttribute. So that is setAttribute to set the name of that object and pass it. Now to get it we have to just pass the name of the value that we have set for that. So we have set the name as student. Okay, so while you retrieving it using getAttribute, it will be received as an object of object type. So we have to specify the which kind of object it is. So I am going to cast it to student. I think I have to import the package here, that's why it's showing error. Import the student package smaller class. Now it's okay. So hope you understand the reason why I cast this as student. If you want, I can show you again the parameter documentation of this attribute. See, object, so that is it's commonly referred as an object, not specifying what kind of object it is. So that's the reason I have cast it to the student type. So now we have got what we want here. Now it's just as earlier we did in this list student. Now it's up to assigning the value of the student object to relevant fields. Here I am going to use the getters of this student class to retrieve the value of the student object to assign in each field. So I am starting from this ID. So here I am opening a scriptlet and calling the getter of getID. Okay, then and here in this next student name field I am going to retrieve it using get name method student dot get name, and now this drop down list of campus. So now before assigning the value to this campus field, let's go back and have a look at this registration page. So if you look at this registration page, so here this campus drop down list, it displays as select campus, and once I click this, the campus names are displayed. So here I have done that by making this first option, this select campus option, as hidden. If I remove this hidden and run this, see the difference. So now this time the select campus also displays as an option, but I don't want it to be. That's the reason I have made it as hidden. So when it comes to this get student JSP, all the other fields, the name, the ID, all those fields are displayed with the current details of the student. So I want this campus field also to display with this current campus name. So for that reason, here also I am going to retrieve the campus name in this first option and made it hidden. So if I do that, his current campus name will be displayed instead of this select campus. So at the same time I am assigning the value here. Earlier I didn't give the value for the select campus option, but here I am giving the value also here. I'll tell the reason while doing the next function, that is update, and here I am making this button value as update. Now let's go to this list student JSP and rerun this. So now I'm going to click this edit button. Sorry, here I think sorry, I have made it as get name. I want it as to be get campus. Okay, now that's fine. Now his student ID, that's a read-only field, so you can't make any modification. You can only modify this name field and the campus. So here by default his campus is Metro, the one he selected while registering, and once I click the drop down list, it displays the all campus details. So here also if I remove this hidden field, this Metro will be displayed twice. That's the reason I have made it as hidden here too. So that's it with this get student JSP page. So now let's see how to update the modifications that we make here.